His quiet desert life was shattered when the HOA declared war. Drones, fake maps, and a smear campaign. But this man had a secret weapon, and he was ready to fight. John Miller had found his slice of heaven, 3 peaceful acres of Arizona desert, far from the city's chaotic embrace. For nearly 3 glorious years, this land, and the home he painstakingly built with his own hands, had been his sanctuary. No nosy committees, no endless rules, just the vast, open sky and the quiet hum of freedom. He'd even painted his siding a bold, twilight blue, a color that spoke of untamed beauty, and with a paintbrush in one hand and a cold beer in the other, he felt truly alive. But then, it happened. A flash of yellow, a stark red stamp, a violation notice for his beautiful blue home. Could this be real? He wasn't part of any association. His realtor had sworn on her designer purse that his property was beyond any HOA's reach. He laughed, a deep, echoing sound of disbelief that bounced off the canyon walls. He crumpled the absurd paper, tossed it into his fire pit, and watched it burn, a defiant toast to the desert's timeless laws. But a chilling thought lingered. Someone had dared to trespass on his land to deliver that insult. Someone had crossed a line, and out here, lines meant everything. Was this just a mistake? Some overzealous clerk's error? Oh, how he wished it were. But the desert had a brutal way of keeping its promises, and John felt in his bones that this yellow envelope was just the beginning. Just 2 mornings later, the ominous crunch of tires on gravel shattered the calm. It wasn't his truck, nor his neighbor's tractor. This sound was alien. A pristine white SUV pulled up, and out stepped Chad Peterson. The very picture of suburban arrogance, perfectly pressed slacks, a crisp polo, and loafers so shiny they reflected the sun. He carried a clipboard like a royal decree. "Mr. Miller," Chad announced with a sickeningly smooth voice, "I'm president of the Red Mesa Trails Homeowners Association." John, still fixing his ATV chain, simply stared. Chad's smile was a thin, practiced line that never quite reached his eye. He began to speak of non-compliant colors and updated community borders. John could only scoff. "My house? On my land? Land your HOA has no say over." Chad chuckled, a patronizing puff of air. "Actually, sir, your property now falls within our design standards." John's blood ran cold. "And I suppose you have the deed to my soul in that folder too," he shot back, his voice low and dangerous. Chad's smirk faltered. John stepped closer, his words cutting like the desert wind. "This conversation is over. You step foot on my land again without a warrant, and I'll introduce you to the business end of a rattlesnake." Chad's jaw tightened, but he retreated, tapping furiously on his phone as he drove away. That's when John knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated move, the first volley in a war he never wanted to fight. The echoes of Chad's visit haunted John that week. The smug tone, the click of those polished loafers. He told himself Chad would disappear, but a deeper part of him knew better. 3 days later, the white SUV returned. This time, John was waiting. A cold drink in his hand, a silent challenge in his eyes. Chad emerged slower, a thicker folder clutched in his hand, his smile a pathetic attempt at cordiality. "Mr. Miller, I think there's been some confusion." John cut him off. "The only confusion I see is you trespassing again." Chad ignored him, producing what he claimed were updated jurisdictional maps. John let him dangle the papers, then simply stated, "I have the original maps from 2022, no HOA." Chad's composure cracked. "Boundaries shift as communities grow," he insisted. "Is forgery common too?" John retorted, hitting a nerve. Chad's eyes narrowed. "There's no need for hostility." John closed the distance between them, the scent of Chad's cologne clashing with desert dust. "My land isn't yours. My house isn't yours. You don't own 1 grain of sand here. Next time, bring a warrant." Chad glanced nervously at the security cameras John had installed. His confidence withered. "This attitude won't serve you well," he muttered. retreating again, his thumbs flying across his phone as he left. This was an organized attack, and John felt the chilling certainty that he was being watched. That night, John painstakingly reviewed his property documents. Deeds, assessor's maps, all confirmed his freedom. Yet Chad had official-looking papers. This wasn't a bluff. It was a conspiracy. The desert had taught John to read tracks, and he sensed dirty fingerprints on Chad's new maps. Someone had moved a line they shouldn't have, and John intended to track them down. Days later, fresh, unfamiliar tracks near his back gate, along with still warm cigarette butts, confirmed his fears. Someone was watching, waiting. The hair on his neck prickled. His cameras showed nothing but endless desert sunrises. But John knew, then an email arrived. No subject, no signature, just a stark message. They're lying. Keep everything. Trust no one. The timing was too perfect. Someone on the inside was reaching out. John felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. He had an ally, but danger was closing in. Sleep was elusive. Coyotes yipped, and John imagined a glowing cigarette beyond his fence. At dawn, a new sound cut the air. A low, mechanical buzz. A drone, sleek and predatory. It hovered over his workshop, then dipped brazenly toward his bedroom window. This wasn't just an HOA dispute. This was organized surveillance, a cold invasion of his private world. The yellow envelope had been a warning shot. Now they were firing for real. John, his jaw tight, went inside. He emerged with his trusty Remington 870, a gun meant for desert critters, never for humans. He tracked the drone, pulled the trigger, and boom! Plastic and wires exploded, raining down onto his driveway. Pure, righteous satisfaction surged through him, quickly followed by the cold dread of consequence. Less than 24 hours later, a young sheriff's deputy was at his door. "Drone incident," he explained. "Claims you destroyed HOA property." John invited him in, showed him the camera footage. The drone's brazen invasion, his defiant shot. The deputy sighed. "Honestly, I'd have done the same thing. This is harassment. You need a lawyer." John nodded, a bitter smile on his face. This wasn't a problem for a wrench or a shotgun. This was a war for the courts. He called Sarah Jenkins, a lawyer renowned for being a brick through glass. She wasted no time. "Mr. Miller, they're bluffing. You're not in their jurisdiction. Their maps are manually amended. Sloppy forgeries." John felt a flicker of hope. Sarah filed records requests, promising to uncover the fingerprints of corruption. "Keep everything," she instructed. "They want to paint you as an unstable loner. Let me do the punching." John could barely contain a laugh. "You think they'll stop if I play nice?" Sarah's voice was flat, resolute. "No, they'll push harder, which is why you stay disciplined." His anger found a focus. If Chad and his cronies wanted to redraw the map for greed, Sarah would show them she didn't play nice with crayons. Sarah's warning proved true. The desert wasn't the only thing watching him now. A neighbor, Karen, filmed him from her SUV. Men in a nondescript sedan sat parked down the road, cameras flashing. Then the flyers appeared on his truck. "He paints his house to stand out, but he doesn't care about you. Say no to Miller's militia-style madness." They'd even cropped his security footage, making his shotgun look like a global threat. His stomach churned. Sarah called, "Check your Facebook." John didn't have Facebook, but screenshots soon flooded his phone. Posts calling him dangerous, armed and hostile, with neighbors warning to keep your kids away. Children. There were no children when he fired that warning shot. But the truth didn't matter. A narrative was being built, and he was the villain. John sat on his porch, anger simmering. He'd come here for freedom, for quiet, but he was becoming a monster in someone else's story. Sarah's voice was steady, but even she sounded unsettled. "They're building a narrative, John. They want you cornered." He stared at the stars. "They're writing their story." "Yes," she affirmed, "but you keep writing yours. Save everything. They're handing us evidence." He wasn't scared anymore. He was furious. And when John Miller was furious, he didn't retreat. He prepared. He reinforced his gate, checked his locks, charged his cameras. If they wanted a monster, fine, but the truth would be carved deeper than their lie. Then, one morning, a metallic groan from his front gate, his chained gate, shattered the quiet. 5 figures marched onto his land, audacious and entitled. Chad Peterson, clipboard in hand, was at the front. Beside him, David Sterling, the HOA's attack dog attorney. 2 enforcement officers, one already measuring his driveway, the other snapping photos of his porch. Trailing them, a private security guard, sidearm at his belt. John stood on his porch, silent, watching them trespass. David's voice was smooth, rehearsed. "Good afternoon, Mr. Miller." "Formal compliance inspection." John cut him off. "You're on private property. That's trespassing." Chad piped up. "As per recent zoning updates, this property falls within our enforcement boundaries." John counted to 3. "You have 60 seconds to get off my land." The security guard's hand drifted to his holster. David smiled, a slow, oily curl of his lips. "Hostility will only escalate this situation, Jack." John walked inside, opened his gun safe. The Remington, his trusted protector, waited. He stepped back onto the porch, shotgun barrel pointed skyward, clicked the safety off with a loud snap, and racked a shell. The metallic sound cut sharper than any word. The security guard froze. Chad stopped mid-note. David's jaw twitched. "You're trespassing," John said. "Final warning. Next time, it's not a warning shot." He raised the barrel and boom! The blast echoed through the canyon. Birds scattered. The measuring man hit the dirt. The others scrambled, retreating, Chad clutching his clipboard like a lifeline. David fumbling for his phone. "Make the call from outside my fence," John commanded. 15 minutes later, 2 sheriff's units arrived. The same young deputy from the drone incident stepped out, an older officer beside him. John showed them the footage. The HOA brigade trespassing. His warning shot. The older deputy nodded. "Looks like they're trying to push you into a corner," John replied. "They picked the wrong ranch." As they drove off, the acrid scent of gunpowder hung in the air. This was far from over. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived. The HOA was suing him, brandishing a deadly weapon, threatening behavior, non-compliance. They were twisting a warning shot into domestic terrorism. John drove straight to Sarah's office. She skimmed the papers, then laughed. "This map is a joke," she declared, pointing to his parcel ID. Their boundaries mysteriously expanded without public notice or county records. "This isn't just overreach, John. This is record tampering, fraud, abuse of process. We're going on the attack." She filed a counterclaim: trespassing, defamation, coercion with falsified documents. The local paper picked up the story, fairly reporting the sheriff's confirmation of unlawful entry. Then, another anonymous email from SR arrived, with attachments, screenshots of internal correspondence between David Sterling and a city zoning employee, Gary Thompson. A draft map, metadata, and a casual message: "Wayne, I'll owe you a steak dinner for pushing this through quietly." Sarah whispered, "We've got them." She filed an emergency motion. Subpoenas went out, and John felt the desert air lighten on his shoulders. The HOA thought they'd dragged a homeowner into court. They'd actually walked into a buzzsaw. One Monday morning, a quiet knock. A man, mid-30s, blue shirt, gray slacks, clutching a cheap briefcase. "Mr. Miller? My name's Michael Evans. I think I'm the one sending those emails." John let him in. Michael, trembling slightly, explained he'd done contract work for Red Mesa Trails and started noticing irregularities. "They told me to delete documents," he revealed. "Original maps showing your property outside the HOA lines. David Sterling ordered me to purge them and backdate a different version. Chad had threatened his contract." "So you started leaking things?" John asked. Michael nodded, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Everything. And I'll testify under oath." Sarah's eyes glinted. "You're a goddamn unicorn," she muttered. Michael gave a humorless laugh. "I'm just tired of watching them bully people. You're not the first, Mr. Miller. You're just the first who stood your ground." John thought of all the others who'd simply rolled over. "Then let's make sure your testimony hits the court before Chad even finishes his morning coffee," John declared. Word spread like wildfire. The courthouse steps buzzed with reporters. Michael, pale but steady, testified. He laid bare how David Sterling ordered him to alter records, how Chad threatened him, how documents were deleted, forged. He explained the metadata, the emails, the steak dinner bribe to Gary Thompson. David Sterling objected, but the judge overruled. Sarah handed the flash drive to the bailiff. Your Honor, these files confirm Mr. Evans' testimony. The HOA didn't stumble into an error. They manufactured a lie. The courtroom fell silent. Chad's face was pale, slick with sweat, his fingers drumming the table. The tide had turned. This wasn't John alone anymore. This was a chain of proof so tight, even David Sterling couldn't wriggle free. On the day of judgment, Judge Honora Lang's courtroom was packed. David Sterling, voice polished, presented his case. John, brandishing a shotgun, was a menace who defied standards. He held up a blown-up photo of John with the gun. Sarah rose, calm as stone. Your Honor, if counsel uses snapshots, let's watch the full picture. The lights dimmed, and John's security footage played. The HOA trespassing, John's clear warning, the shotgun blast skyward. The still photo looked pathetic. David's witnesses crumbled under Sarah's cross-examination. Then came his strongest card, the slick, updated zoning map showing John's land within HOA boundaries. Sarah waited, then presented the official 2022 assessor's plat. Mr. Sterling calls this progress, she stated. I call it forgery. She called Michael Evans. Michael, though terrified, spoke with steady conviction, exposing the entire scheme. By day 2, David Sterling's confidence was fraying. He clung to intent, waving the shotgun photo, invoking children and community safety. But Sarah stood, unshuffling, ungrandstanding. Your Honor, 3 simple facts remain. 1. Red Mesa officials trespassed. 2. Mr. Miller discharged a shotgun vertically as a warning. 3. The HOA's updated map was not a lawful annexation. It was forged. She revealed a notarized deposition from Gary Thompson, confirming David Sterling bypassed procedure. The law does not grant private attorneys the power to redraw city maps. Judge Lang leaned forward. I see no justification for the plaintiff's actions. The evidence shows the defendant acted within his rights on his own property. The HOA, through its officers, committed misconduct, trespass, defamation, and record tampering. The gallery rustled. I further order the HOA to pay Mr. Miller $120,000 in damages, including legal fees. Chad slumped. David stared, stunned. Sarah whispered, It's done. They're finished. The gavel fell, judgment delivered. Stepping into the sunlight, John lit a cigarette, a habit he hadn't touched in months. He hadn't won with a shotgun, but with proof, with unwavering resolve. The truth, held long enough, hit harder than any weapon. 2 weeks later, the desert's quiet was a welcome balm. He wanted to celebrate, to mark the change. He set up the biggest smoker in 3 counties, stacked mesquite, and taped a sign to his gate. Freedom Friday Cookout. Everyone welcome. Trucks and cars rolled in. Neighbors he'd barely known, bringing food, chairs, a guitar. Folks who'd looked away now clapped him on the back. The smoker hissed, music played, and people sat shoulder to shoulder, a true community. As the sun set, someone projected the Shawshank Redemption onto his garage wall. John watched, a new understanding settling in. They hadn't tried to steal his land or his house. They tried to steal the spirit of belonging without control. Then, a man about his age, wearing a t-shirt that read, Let's keep it neighborly, walked up. Evening, he said, extending a hand. Nate Harper, I was just elected president of the Red Mesa HOA. John gave him a long look. Nate laughed. Trust me, I didn't run. They dragged me in after Chad resigned. We're rewriting everything. John nodded, wary. As long as starting fresh doesn't mean measuring my grass. Nate grinned. Not a chance. My land starts where your nonsense ends, he said, pointing to John's hand-painted sign, raising his drink in salute. Mind if I stay for a burger? Only if you brought your own ketchup. John replied, a genuine smile finally breaking through. As the movie credits rolled, the desert sky thick with stars, people lingered, laughing, making plans for another cookout. No whispers, no furtive glances for Chad or David. John sat on his porch, his shotgun leaning against the wall, not out of need, but because it had earned its place. The HOA still existed, but it no longer owned him. He hadn't won by being angry or armed. He'd won by refusing to surrender the truth, by outlasting their lies, and by holding on to the belief that what's right is worth the fight. And maybe, just maybe, he'd given others a little courage too. The desert kept its promise again that night. The air was still, the stars were clear, and for the first time in months, John could breathe easy. David Sterling lost his law license. Chad Peterson vanished into Phoenix. And John, he fixed his carburetor, repainted his porch rail bright red in defiance, and every Friday night he lights the smoker, inviting everyone through his gate without fear. Because freedom isn't just about not having rules, it's knowing no one can fake a map and claim your soul. The desert keeps its promises. So does John.